All right, so nothing else, and we'll move on. Verse 11, "For the Son of Man is come to save that which was lost. How think ye, if a man have 100 sheep, and one of them be gone astray, doth he not leave the 99, goeth into the mountains, and seek that which is gone astray?" If we want to be great in the kingdom, then we must see the value of every soul. Every soul that's here, every soul that's out there. Verse 11, "The Son of Man is come to seek and to save the lost." That is anyone and everyone. God is interested in the redemption of man. That's what Jesus is illustrating here. So if that's what God is interested in, what are we need to be interested in? We need to be interested in the redemption of every man. The apostles, at this point, they're wanting to categorize people. They're not as important in saving as this other class of people are important in saving. Jesus says, no. If they are lost, they need to be saved. It doesn't matter who they are. In verse 12, we are able to view just how much effort is needing to be put forth in the saving of just one soul. "If a man have 100 sheep, and one of them be gone astray, doth he not leave the 99, and goeth into the mountains, and seeketh that which is gone astray?" Goeth into the mountains. I don't know that I could really appreciate this section the way that I needed to before getting here. Because, yeah, we've got the Blue Ridge in Virginia, but it's, with being here contrasted to being there, it's pretty tame, pretty mild. But in going on that one hike, man, that just left a mark on me, with Reese and Jordan, and to know what it's like to go into the mountains. This is not easy. This is dangerous, perilous. There are bears up there. There are mountain lions up there. There are thieves, robbers, who want to seclude themselves and hide out in the mountains. The weather can change in the blink of an eye. Rock slides. You take one step, one wrong step, and you're falling over the edge. Or you're getting hurt. You're breaking a leg. And then you're just stuck up there. But we're taking all of that, all of those things that would keep us from going and doing what we're supposed to do, when we set them to the side. All of those things would be excuses so as to keep us from going and doing what we need to do with the one lost sheep. And guess what? If we allow those excuses to keep us from doing what we need to do out of fear that, well, we won't be able to get the sheep, what are we actually bringing about? We don't act because, well, we don't want to lose the sheep. But what are you actually determining that's going to happen 100% if you do not act? You've lost the sheep. So it's better to go ahead and try and lose than not to try at all and for sure lose the one sheep. So even with this, we're right back in Matthew chapter 7 with the man that built his house on the sand. And I believe at that time we were actually dealing with flooding in this state. And we were putting ourselves in that situation. Just imagine, put yourself in that. You're up here on a hill, your house is built, but then you've got your neighbor down there in the valley, and you're seeing their house be swept away. And it's just, how would that make you feel? That'd be terrible. They've lost everything. And that's the illustration Jesus is giving when it comes to sin. Sin takes everything. And we mentioned how that it's not just a danger for the one that built his house on the sand, but what could be the mindset of the person who's up on the hill, you on the hill, and you see your neighbors being swept away? What's going to kick in? Go save them, which means your life is now in danger. When we get involved in sin and we start thinking about, well, this isn't going to affect anybody else but me, you better think again. You're going to get wrapped up in sin. Somebody's going to have to come and get you. And you need to start thinking about them in that situation. What's this going to do to them? Are they going to be swept away with me? Are they going to get hurt in this? As I'm out here wandering away? Changing our view of every aspect, of everything, of ourselves. What I'm wanting to do is not more important than what everybody else needs. But all of this is showing us the effort in going after one lost soul. And if so be that he find it, verily I say unto you, he rejoiceth more of that sheep than of the 99 which went not astray. Even so it is not the will of your Father which is in heaven, that one of these little ones should perish. So even going, not trying to, overbeat the point, but if we're going to look at this in the context, and it's, well, Jesus is talking specifically about children, then okay, in this context, Jesus is specifically talking about sheep. Nobody does that in this section. They all realize, okay, we're talking about these little ones, these believers, these little members of the church. Then you need to take that back into the other place. Deal with this fairly. But again, we're being shown a glimpse as to what's going on in the unseen realm. This is the illustration used before moving into our personal relationships. Verse 15 is going to start in dealing with problems inside of the church. How we are going to deal with each other. This is it. This is the mindset. If so be that he find it, verily I say unto you, he rejoiceth more of that sheep than of the 99 which went not astray. Now again, why is this? Because the 99 are fine. They're protected. But then you just start thinking about this little one and that it's lost up there. Now, since we're using these illustrations, let's move it from sheep and let's put it in the frame of a little child. And actually, not too long ago, we had a child go missing. Was it here local? It was pretty close by that a child went missing.
4-year-old?
Yeah, the 4-year-old that went missing up in the mountains. How do you think people dealt with that? It was night and day, 24/7. We've got to find this kid. Why? Because he's out there all alone. He's out there in the elements. Oh, he's just a little kid, doesn't matter. No. If there was anybody that matters the most, it's the little ones. It's the most vulnerable. So, what about inside of the church? When we are considering those that need the most compassionate response and just the willingness and desire to go after them is the one that leaves. And it's this section. I mean, we have tons of brethren that they will teach on this, and I'm sure a lot of our brethren know this by heart, but then they do not want to connect it to this. This is where Jesus is leading them. Offenses, problems, they're going to happen. Why do they happen? More than likely, it's usually because of worldliness, carnality. How do we fix it? It has to start here. If you do not start here, church discipline, church correction will never work. And that's part of the reason why. A lot of the times inside of our brotherhood, when it comes to elders or brethren trying to correct somebody inside of the church, it doesn't work because they don't put this with it. But when we're considering what's being presented, as we said, we're going through this, we're making the application to others, but I need to make the application to me also. If this is going to work, then this mindset has to be on both sides. If I am the corrector, I need to be thinking about this. And if you are the one being corrected, this is what needs to come into play. We need to view this as the possibility. Okay, am I the sheep that's going astray? Now, in dealing with this, so, all right, before we get into this, questions, comments, thoughts on that? All right. 15, 16. Moreover, if thy brother shall trespass against thee, go and tell him his fault between thee and him alone. If he shall hear thee, thou hast gained thy brother. But if he will not hear thee, then take with thee one or two more, that in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses every word may be established. Now, usually we think about this, or we think if someone is mad, or they're the ones that's been offended or trespassed against, then the person that did the trespassing should come to them. Well, that's not 100% wrong. But when we're taking all of this into consideration as to what Jesus is presenting, it could very well be the case that the person that has trespassed doesn't know that they've trespassed. So you, as being the one that is offended, take the initiative and you go to them. You express the problem. You don't run off to somebody else and start talking to them about what's going on. Here's the situation. And of course, we're dealing with this on the standpoint of a private matter. Tell it between thee and him alone, because nobody else knows about it. But if we start running off and we start telling other people, then we're going to start dividing up. Or we're going to start building parties. And especially if we're only telling one side of the story and not taking into consideration the other side. So this is designed so as to keep it from getting to here. If we can keep this quiet and keep this between us so that nobody else knows, then that's the way it needs to be done. Because nobody else needs to know. But the only way that this is possible is if we have the beginning section and that we have a concern for souls. A soul is lost until this matter is corrected. So again, we're going back to Matthew chapter 5. Greatness is seen, exercised. by not letting a soul stay lost. Going after that one sheep. And just the mentality that, okay, I'm not going to let this rest. I'm not going to let this lie. And let's just say, Jordan does something to me. And instead of being concerned for him, I let my feelings get in the way. And I say, fine, I just won't have anything to do with Jordan. Both of us are in trouble. Potentially. Now I say potentially because we're going to get into these words about trespasses and offenses in just a moment. But what we have being set up as the background of this is Old Testament information. Leviticus 5, 1, then dropping down to 14. God says, and if a soul sin and hear the voice of swearing, and is a witness, whether he has seen or known of it, if he do not utter it, then he shall bear his iniquity. Our brethren have taken on the mindset of, well, it's none of my business. I don't need to get involved. No. If a soul sin and I know of it, I witness it, and if I do not utter it, if I do not say something, God is going to hold me accountable. We don't get to pass this to anybody else. When I see someone doing wrong and I know it's wrong, I cannot just let it go by. And why not? I shouldn't just be viewing it from the standpoint of, okay, well, I'll get in trouble too. A soul is lost. Leviticus 5:14, and the Lord spake unto Moses, and there's more about this in the middle, you can read that on your own time. If a soul commit a trespass and sin, notice, through ignorance. Under the law of Moses, they had prescription safeguards for those sins that I even commit that I don't even know that I'm committing. Because if you think about it, under the Old Testament system and the thousands of laws that they had to keep, you know you're going to break something at some point that you didn't even realize you were breaking. But even with that, it's still called a sin. So if I commit sin without intention of sin against you, if I do this without realizing that I've done it, how can I fix this? How can I straighten this up and out unless you come and tell me? So you see, you know about it. Oh, but I'm not going to say anything. So you're just going to let me stay in sin. That's not how we're supposed to react, be with one another. And that's why they had the priest. The priest was establishing for them what is holy and unholy, what is clean and what is unclean. They were there for the specific reason of being able to point these things out. And so you just take, for example, like even Gentiles that are coming into Israel, and guess what? They're not brought up. They've not had the law read to them every Sabbath day. So guess what they're going to do? They're going to know, there's going to be things in the law they do not know is in the law, and they're going to go around doing those things. So what do they need? They need somebody there to tell them, to explain to them, instruct them. Hey, here's what you're doing. You don't need to do that. Here's the reason why. Continuing on, verse 15 of Leviticus 5, if a soul commit a trespass and sin through ignorance in the holy things of the Lord, then he shall bring for his trespass unto the Lord a ram without blemish out of the flocks, with thy estimation by shekels of silver, after the shekel of the sanctuary for a trespass offering. And he shall make amends for the harm that he hath done in the holy thing, and shall add the fifth part thereto, and give it unto the priest, and the priest shall make an atonement for him with the ram of the trespass offering, and it shall be forgiven him. Verse 17. And if a soul sin and commit any of these things which are forbidden to be done by the commandment of the Lord, though he wist it not, yet is he guilty, and shall bear his iniquity. Something done, but you did it not knowing that there's something wrong with it is not an excuse. We have a responsibility to every single person that is here to tell them when something is wrong, especially when they do not know that they are guilty. When they do not know that fact, we have to explain it to them. What's been done, why it's wrong. Now, as we can read from the context, this is not just something that I do not like. That's not what we're talking about. If a soul sin, that's what we're talking about. These words for trespass, these words for offenses, these are not personal slights. Well, you've done something that I don't like. I can't help that. You don't need to read into that. Have I actually sinned? Is what we're talking about. Do not just complain about it and then let it try to disappear on its own. Ignorance does not excuse it. But as we're saying, before I start trying to address this, I need to determine, is this a sin? And if it's not, then I do not need to bring it up. Is it a sin, or are my feelings just hurt? Is this a matter of opinion as to something you don't like? Now, just as an example, I had a classmate at school, preaching school, and he got offended about singing the song Glory, Glory, Hallelujah, because another title for that song is the Battle Hymn of the Republic for the northern states, and he was from the south. And he wanted to try to pull this card of Matthew 18, well, that offends me, therefore you shouldn't do it. And we told him quick, fast, in a hurry. You need to go sit down. That's not what we're dealing with here. But that's what brethren try to pull here. Well, you've offended me in this. Is it a sin? Well, no, it's not a sin. Well, then your feelings are just hurt. And that's not what we're dealing with here. We don't need to blow this up. If this is not a sin, then why is it the case that you're just allowing your feelings to get hurt? It goes back into our Corinthians study. Ego's getting in the way. And that's not the matters that we're dealing with. We are dealing with clear-cut trespasses, sins that are being committed. So with that classmate, it's not my problem. You need to get over it. That fight was had years ago. Guess what? You lost. Now, if it was a matter of something inside of the song being unscriptural, that's one thing. Okay, we can talk about that. But just the thing of, well, that hurts my southern pride, I could not care less. You've got a problem. I am not entertaining every single petty thing that you might have. But even with that, it comes back to, well, here's how I think it ought to be. Okay, that's fine. But you don't always get your way. I don't always get my way. And if we're viewing ourselves properly, then we will start viewing things in a proper sense, in a proper way of, okay, here are serious matters that need to be handled. Here's just something that's kind of agitating me and I don't need to deal with that. That in fact, I may need to deal with that within myself and asking myself, why is this agitating me? Why is this causing a problem? Can I actually pin a sin on it? Or is it just something I don't personally like? If I can't pin a sin on it, then I need to figure it out and let it go. Now you move on, even into Leviticus 6. We were in 5, now we're in 6. The Lord spake unto Moses, saying, if a soul sin and commit a trespass. Same word that we're dealing with in Matthew 18. Your brother trespasses against you. What are we dealing with? Sin. But this is a trespass against the Lord, and lie unto his neighbor in that which was delivered to him to keep, or in fellowship, or in a thing taken away by violence, or hath deceived his neighbor. These are all very serious offenses. This isn't petty stuff. This is not something of, well, my feelings are hurt. Stop reading into stuff. And so when it comes to this, moreover, if thy brother shall trespass against thee, I'm not needing to look at every little thing that somebody does to me and then just automatically run to this. Because that's not what this is. So many problems inside of the church could be resolved peacefully if the person that is offended would just step back and just say, why am I even letting this bother me? And if you think that there is something there, then okay, go and talk to them. And more than likely, you'll find out. Whether it was something that was said, something that was done, that they'll explain, well, no, I wasn't intending it that way. Well, okay, I shouldn't have taken it that way. Then you let it lie. You let it go. Go and tell him his fault. Trespass, fault, these are sins. In this matter, what is to be my concern? Not that my feelings are hurt, but that an actual sin is committed. And that a soul is in danger. And I want to see that it is corrected. Puts responsibility on the one that does the wrong, puts the responsibility on the one that's been wronged. This phrase, thou hast gained thy brother, that is a commercial term. A gathering of wealth, like that sheep. Sheep is money. That's income. Oh yeah, I'm going after that sheep because I can't stand to lose that. That's money going out of my pocket if it disappears. All right? What if a brother or sister leaves? He has lost something. I have lost something of value, of importance. And the very fact of it saying that you gain, they're going away, they're lost. You cannot gain, you cannot bring back if something is still there with you. But if he will not hear thee, then take with thee one or two more, that in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses every word may be established. We're being shown that there's the possibility that this will not work. Go to your brother or sister alone, tell them their fault. Okay, it's not going to work. What's the next step? Bring 2 or more. Bring 2 or more so that there can be concern on both sides. Here's an example of when we must bring others into this. This is Deuteronomy 19. That's the background of this. But in bringing your witnesses, you do not discuss the problem with your witnesses ahead of time. Because then you've tampered with and you've corrupted your witnesses. The witnesses are designed so as being unbiased. But if I've got a problem with one of the members here, and then I start running to Reese and Jordan, who would be the other 2 witnesses, like we're in a small group, so we definitely need to take this into consideration. And I start telling them ahead of time what's going on, and then we go into the situation, you're already going to have your minds made up, potentially before you get there. This is designed so as to be a safeguard for both parties. Because it could be the case that though I'm the one who has been trespassed against, and that I'm the one that's offended, that we get into the situation and the 2 witnesses, 2 or 3 witnesses, hear both sides, and then they have to turn around and say, Micah, you shouldn't be getting upset about this. To where they're able to come in and see it clearly and be able to say, okay, yeah, this is a real issue. So and so, you need to correct this. Or to be brought back on the one coming and saying, this really shouldn't be happening. Because in allowing our feelings to get hurt, it's very easy that now I've brought an accusation that's not founded. And then I have to be the one to be, corrected in this. That I might have imagined some wrong or some slight against me. And the witnesses have to correct me and say, Micah, this isn't there. This is not a big deal. Making a mountain out of a molehill. And even in 1 Corinthians chapter 6, Paul discusses suffering the wrong. But what kind of wrong? Okay. 1 Corinthians 6, dare any of you having a matter against another, go to law before the unjust and not before the saints? Do ye not know that the saints shall judge the world? And if the world shall be judged by you, are ye unworthy to judge the smallest matters? So it's in this context. We've just gone from 1 Corinthians 5. That's not a small matter. The son that has his father's wife, that is a huge matter. You won't touch that. But these little matters that really shouldn't be matters at all, what are you doing? You're taking them to court. You're blowing this way out of proportion. And this is the context where Paul says, if he shall neglect, I don't have it in here. But this is the context where Paul says that we should suffer the wrong. In what? These smallest matters. These little matters that are not actually matters at all. Don't get riled up about it. Don't let it ruffle your feathers. Don't let it ruin your day. Because more than likely, there's not even anything that's there. And if I am little in my own sight, when someone does something to me, I will not assume anything about it. If I'm not putting myself as bigger than them, then when they do something to me, and it's just, well, who are they to do that to me? Do they not know who I am? That won't come into play. Because we'll be equal and allowing these things to happen. We'll stop there because we're at 11 o'clock, and we definitely got a big jump. But even with trying to do that, there's still the possibility of failure. That you come to them, deal with it privately, won't hear you, bring 2 or 3 witnesses, they won't hear them. If they won't hear them, tell it to the congregation. You bring them before the church. And you tell them, let it be unto, and notice here, but this is the last point, if he neglect to hear the church, in bringing this to the church, this is not the elders making an announcement to the church. Okay, we've gone to see this brother, we've taken the witnesses, now we're withdrawing fellowship from him. That's not what this is. In bringing it to the church, that is before, notice, this comes before, let him be unto thee as a heathen man and a publican. Telling it to the church is so that the church can now go and make an effort to regain the brother. Not an announcement of, here's what we've done. So we have a lot of brethren that skip a step. That they jump to the withdrawal process or the withdrawing before they've actually done this. And that this is an effort where we get everybody involved so as to straighten this out. But there's still the chance that he will not listen even to the entire group. Then you mark him as a heathen man and publican.
It's also not a thing where it's like, okay, the announcements after church or whatever, to where, all right, now, because it could take time to where you have to go individually
Yeah.
as the church, because over there it was like, if something happened, it was, okay, we went through our church services, we're here at the announcements, somebody needs to come up and do something, and it's kind of there and now. That's
Yeah.
the church setting. It doesn't have to be that. It could be, okay, we've done this, now everybody needs to get involved however they can to go meet up with so-and-so and whatever, but it would be, okay, here's the announcements, you kind of come up to the pew and you do that, and so it gets into this ritual thing.
Yeah.
And I want that out there, that it's not supposed to be like that either.
Well, and even with the 2 and 3 witnesses, it's not a situation of, okay, the witnesses go to one party and then they go to the other. All parties are together. Like you're sitting down with the witnesses and hearing this out. Not this business of, well, we'll go to you and then we'll go to them. No, you're coming together. And you should be able to do that. Your brethren. You should be able to sit across the table, look each other eye to eye, and get this hammered out. And so to the point that Jordan is mentioning here about the church being involved in this, I had a teacher in preaching school, and I would hope that it's true since he's telling it, but they had a brother who was wayward and in danger of being withdrawn from, and they had everybody from the congregation show up at the brother's house in his front yard. And one of the elders went and knocked on the door to get the brother to come out. And when he saw everybody there, the elder said, "We are all here because we care about you." And we even tried something like that in Martinsville, where we had a brother who got upset, and it was something that was made up in his head. He took something the wrong way that wasn't there. All the steps were taken, and then it got to this point of telling it before the church, and instead of having Wednesday night assembly, Wednesday night Bible class, we all drove out to his house. And we all took turns going in, sitting down with him and expressing how that he needed to fix this. We didn't want to lose him. Now, even with that, it didn't work. And the situation that he was in, it was pretty embarrassing. What happened to him? And he just couldn't get over. Couldn't get over the embarrassment. But even with that, it's just, you shouldn't be embarrassed. We're all here and we're all expressing this. Come back. But even with that, the possibility is that's not going to work. Because both parties have to have it, have to want to have it. Okay. Stop at that point. We'll pick up verse 18. We almost made it to where I wanted to get to. Any other thoughts, questions, comments? All right. Appreciate your attention. And we'll stop there.